I'm back. I have the Super Collins Brothers here for you tonight. Not Super Mario Brothers, it's Super Collins Brothers, and they have some of the best literature on UFOs. So I think it's going to be Alien Summer. Again, I know Jay and I did that a couple years ago where we went through all of the invasion movies and 4th of July, like ET movies, and we called it Alien Summer, but it's popping off now, and you guys have one of the best resources on like UFOs, aliens, and the whole thing. So why don't you go ahead and hold up that book? I wish I had a copy here with me. It's at our other place, but Invoking the Beyond is what it's called. And this is probably, I hear about this all the time, and it's one of the best resources on aliens and UFOs. And I think that's going to be the topic of the summer. So welcome, guys. How are you?
Hey, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Jamie.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you for having us on.
Yeah, so I think Jay reminded me that you guys were one of his first interviews.
Yeah. As
He
a matter of
actually
fact, yeah,
started.
we were. Yeah, I remember I first became familiar with Jay. Golly, that was years ago. I had published an article that I would later on expand into our first book, The Ascendancy of the Scientific Dictatorship, and it was covering the occult roots of Darwinism. And Jay posted it on his Nicene Truth website at the time. I think that was what the name of his website was at the time. And I just messaged him to let him know, hey, I appreciate you spreading the word and, and letting people know about the article. And yeah, went from there and we did a few interviews and, now here we are years later and yeah, it's been a wild ride, but it was really great of Jay to disseminate our work like that, and he still does. I think he tweeted out something about an older interview that we did over the topic of the UFO deception, the UFOs as a terrestrial manipulation today on Twitter.
Mhm. And not only do you guys have that book, but we are also promoting the new edition of our research anthology by the Cultural Engineering Studies, or Decoding Culture Foundation, I should say, is the website, and their publication is Cultural Engineering Studies. I have a article in the first edition about Mary Poppins. I was pretty busy for the second one, but the third one, I have an article about Pinocchio, and you guys have two um, part one and part two articles about automated autotheism, transhumanism, and the technological uh, transposition of divinity. Did I get that right?
You did.
Yeah,
Yes, you did.
okay. And this is going to go really good with the show that we just did with Brett Carollo, and we're going to get Thomas Miller on here too. So it's going to be all about these great publications for the next couple weeks. But before we get into the transhumanism, I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about current alien events. Now, did you guys see the new picture that Donald Trump posted with him and an alien?
I know Phil has. I haven't seen it
Yeah,
just
I
yet.
did.
Let me
It's
pull it
quite
up.
common.
Okay, so here is one of them. Him and this buff looking like he works out, right? This alien,
Yeah, he
yeah.
does. He's not as feminine as we're used to seeing I
Yeah,
mean, they're usually really scrawny in all the other
Yeah,
depictions,
yeah, they're totally.
Yeah.
He's really swole there.
he
Yeah.
works out. It's a very toned body.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard Jay's new cringecore songs. They're really funny, but this one is totally like some kind of, fantasy, right?
Yeah.
So there's that one. And then there's this one. So the United States Space Force looking upcoming.
I had seen that one. I had not seen that one.
Yeah.
Wow, where can I sign up?
Right? That reminds me of
My
that
official Space Force emblem.
Starship Troopers. Do you remember that old
Oh
sci-fi?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. With
And
all the overwrought like propaganda in it. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's what kind of.
It opens up with these propaganda commercials, and they're like, if you want to be a global citizen, you have to join the Space Force and go kill the bugs, right? So,
Yeah, yeah. Service that guaranteed citizenship or
Yeah,
something like that. That was the motto,
yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
We actually write a little bit about Robert Heinlein and his influence on neoconservatism in Invoking the Beyond, and his work's heavily tinctured by technocratic theory, technocratic thought. Which is kind of ironic given the fact that he fancied himself more of a libertarian, and you would think that there could be nothing more averse to the libertarian worldview than technocracy, but he did in fact have some heavy technocratic themes in a lot of his work.
Well, that's a perfect place to start because Heinlein also wrote the book Stranger in a Strange Land, which is where we get the idea of grok, right?
Hmm.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That book was also big in circles. I think like the Manson circles or circles
Mhm.
related to some of the occult circles that are considered adjacent to Manson or that he might have been frequenting and stuff. Yeah, yeah, it's
And
really. As a matter of fact, I remember a few years back when that show, oh, what was it called? Aquarius. When Aquarius was out, store with David Duchovny from X-Files. There's this one scene where a guy is like reading a copy of Strangers in Strange Land,
Mhm.
and it's like, it just it leaves us with that image, kind of like insinuating more to come. But the series didn't get past cross that, season two
Mhm.
threshold. It got canceled thereafter. But like, yeah, it seemed to be insinuating that there was more to come in that regard, and so showing how strangers in a strange land and Highline and probably those OTO circles that Highline is reputed to have been close to. Some people even believe that he was a part of that lodge, the Agape Lodge there, and I think Pasadena, I think it
Mhm.
was in California. How that might have contributed to the family and to the family's theology and stuff. But the series didn't get past the second season. It was canceled. Even though it was written with 5 seasons in mind. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
we to see what the great reveal would have been. So
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too how just science fiction in general um, just kind of forms like this corpus of mythic archetypes and what have you, a body of mythology that is drawn upon by ufological circles, and also bizarre cults and what have you, such as Manson's little circle. What if you look at science fiction literature and really what you have, in particular with sci-fi literature that is related to space, and then of course aliens, you have what I would consider kind of in a Vogelian sense, an amenitization of the eschaton. If you've ever read, Eric Voegelin, he of course coined that phrase, amenitizing the eschaton, which basically means drawing the eschaton or the end of days into the experiential limits of humanity, into the ontological confines of the physical universe. And you see that transposition of heaven and hell and angels, demons, and God. You see that transposition into the physical universe. God is suddenly construed as being not you know a transcendent God, as Orthodox Christianity understands him. He's transcendent in Orthodox theology. He's also immanent. He's in creation as much as he is outside of creation. He's beyond creation, but he's also within it. There's a balance between transcendence and immanence. But science fiction literature completely and totally immanentizes God. And, he's now understood as literally an inhabitant of the physical universe. And he's concretized or hypostatized as these aliens, as these alien beings who are viewed as virtually deific. They arise from the Kaza Suai order, the self-generating order of the universe. So they're kind of the biological appendages of a pantheistic divinity, an intramundane divinity.
And they have all the attributes that we would ascribe to the divine. Like, you got ET rising from the dead,
Right.
you got Spock rising from the dead, you
Yeah.
got ET able to heal a child's finger merely by touching it,
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You have in of course Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You have the invocation of a particular piece of scripture as these astronauts are preparing to leave Earth with these visiting aliens, and it's the piece of scripture which says, "He shall give his angels charge over thee," and the aliens are portrayed as literally angelic.
Hmm.
There's this recurring angelic motif. And that's in large measure attributable to an Enlightenment pamphleteer, a pamphleteer from the 18th century Enlightenment by the name of Jacob Illivi. And I think I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. It's Illive, Jacob Illivi.
Hmm.
And he basically promoted this very bizarre neo-Gnostic narrative, this latter-day neo-Gnostic evangel between 1730 and 1750. And you can find that narrative in his work, The Oration Spoke at Joiners Hall. You can find it in his other work, The Layman's Vindication of the Christian Religion. And I think some of these are actually available on Internet Archive. You can find them archived on Internet Archive. And you can also learn a bit more about him through the works of I believe the author's name is Herrick. I can't remember his first name, but
James Herrick.
I think I think it is James Herrick. He wrote the book. He wrote the book Scientific Mythologies, and he also wrote the book the Twilight of the I think it was the Twilight of the traditional religious or the religious traditions of the West. I can't recall the name of his other book, but he wrote a book called Scientific Mythologies as well, and he touches on Jacob Levy in that book,
Hmm.
and he basically reveals that Jacob Levy um, was, for all practical purposes, a neo-Gnostic, an Enlightenment era neo-Gnostic, which doesn't, come as particularly, shocking, given the fact that the 18th century Enlightenment was awash in Gnosticism.
Hmm.
Uh, the Enlightenment was arguably a Gnostic revival of sorts. You had people like Voltaire, who wrote pieces of work like Plato, I think it was called Plato's Cave. And in that work, he basically reiterated Gnostic cosmology. You had Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who, of course, viewed civilization as this corrupting force,
Hmm.
which is kind of vintage Gnosticism. A lot of ancient Gnosticism was heavily anarchistic and very, very averse to any civilization because the Gnostics concretized evil. They assigned evil a positive ontological status instead of viewing evil as merely a tendency of the will, something within us, a privation within us. They viewed it as something that was a literal animated essence interwoven into the ontology of creation, and therefore national governments ergo national governments were just inherently corrupt
Hmm.
in the Gnostics view. And so you can see that sort of thinking in Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
You also had like Adam Weishaupt's Bavarian Illuminati,
Yeah,
which I think he saw his Bavarian Illuminati as kind of the shock troops or the cadre of the Enlightenment. I really think that's how he saw them. They were the ones that were going to go out and affect the change that all these Enlightenment thinkers that the philosophers had written about. They were going to make it. They were going to make it the real deal. They were going to bring it into reality. He talked a lot about a kind of hidden Jesus, a kind of
yeah,
esoteric Jesus,
yeah,
the real Jesus that all the Christians are keeping us from knowing about, that the church is
right.
suppressing, and that's very much in
Yeah,
the Gnostic vein.
yeah,
That's very
exactly.
much
That echoes the heretical Christology of Gnosticism. Well, no, none of you knew the real Jesus, only the Gnostics, only those in possession of not secret knowledge or gnosis know the real Jesus and know what he's really teaching. But this was the milieu. This was the formative ethos within which Jacob Alevi found himself immersed.
Hmm.
And so he espoused his own neo-Gnostic evangel. He basically echoed the cosmological pessimism of his ancient Gnostic antecedents by claiming that Earth was hell. He called Earth hell,
Hmm.
or that is to say, a place that's inferior to heaven. Right there, that's vintage Gnosticism, because the Gnostics, again, assigning this positive ontological status to corruption, viewed all of the material world not as good as Orthodox, Christianity held,
Yeah.
because Orthodox Christianity views matter has redemptive properties. It has redemptive potentials. You see that with Saint John of Damascus. He says, I worship the God of matter. I worship the God of matter who deigned to become matter so that he could save matter,
Mhm.
and so there was an understanding that matter in and of itself is not evil. But the Gnostics had this more so this dysteleological view of matter as being, a cosmic abortion, and so did Jacob Alevi. Jacob Alevi viewed heaven as, or earth as hell,
Hmm.
and he said that the earth really served no purpose, that it wasn't made to be populated by any order of beings. It was not made for us. You hear that theme like in films like Interstellar. In Interstellar, if you recall, I believe Michael Caine's character says, "Well, maybe Earth was never meant to be our home. Maybe we're
Hmm.
meant to send to the stars." And
The idea also, I mean, there's a transmission belt where that idea gets brought up to more modern day, like deep state manifestations, like Jim Jones' People's Temple.
that's exactly right. Yeah.
Jim Jones said, "Look, I can." He basically had his own kind of kind of ufological religion where he said there's all these socialist paradise
Hmm.
out there,
Right.
in space, all these planets that have like these wonderful perfect socialist societies,
Yeah.
and he could
Oh,
lead the people there and all.
And that is conspicuously uh, reminiscent of the neo-Gnostic cosmology espoused by Jacob Alevi. And Jacob
uh-huh.
Alevi said the same thing.
Yeah.
He declared that man was an apostate angel imprisoned within the body, which basically qualified as a corporeal penitentiary for the soul. And
Hmm.
in order to escape that corporeal penitentiary and transcend this penal colony of this demonized world, man had to undergo some vaguely defined earthbound test, a purgatorial trial. And once he had completed that trial, man would allegedly spiritually ascend to other planets, which Illevi claimed were heavenly habitations, were empyrean habitations. And
Mhm. But
he
but
was,
Jones
yeah, Jones
Jones
said the same thing.
but Jones might have been incorporating this all into his theology at the behest of covert political circles. I mean, I don't know if you ever heard the death tape of Jones there when he was in Guyana with Jonestown, and this was the recording right before the what some people believe are mass suicides. What was more likely was murder.
Hmm.
And you hear him on the tape say, "Get Dwyer out of here." He says, "Get Dwyer out of here."
Hmm.
And Dwyer, who he was referring to, was Richard Dwyer, who was the deputy chief of missions at the American Embassy in Georgetown, Guyana. And that Richard Dwyer was suspected to be some kind of CIA official. And of course, when you're talking about embassies, all they are kind of like launch pads for intelligence, and and covers for intelligence operatives. And so, Dwyer was in all likelihood somehow connected to the CIA, which he always tried to vehemently deny, or not. He skirt the issue whenever it was brought to his attention. And also, when uh, when um, when Jones was in Brazil, all of his neighbors there in Brazil were convinced that he was working for the CIA. Newspapers even reported that neighbors were commenting on, yeah, we thought he was working for the CIA.
Hmm.
He'd go out in diplomatic cars and black limousines and stuff. And
Hmm.
when he incorporated all this Gnostic stuff into his UFO kind of religion, he might have been doing it at the behest of what we would call the deep state, called what or covert circles of some sort, covert political circles.
Yeah, and if you look at the CIA, there you have more connective sinews to neo-Gnostic evangelists, so to speak. These modern promulgators of a neo-Gnostic evangel with none other than Carl Jung.
Hmm.
Carl Jung, of course, played a major role in the popularization of the Gnostic codices, the Nag Hammadi codices, and that his revelations concerning those codices kind of coincided with the summer and fall of 1947, during which we see this spate of UFO sightings, this great wave of UFO sightings,
Hmm.
and that has inspired modern Gnostic revivalists like John Lash, who basically believes that this pattern of events that we saw in the summer and fall of 1947, and it's coinciding with the Nag Hammadi Gospels revelation made by Carl Jung. He believed that it foreshadowed an emergent Gnostically inspired religion that would basically supplant
Yeah,
Christianity.
but yeah, like you were saying there, Alan Dulles, Leon Davis, and who was one of the scientists on the Manhattan Project. Leon Davidson was convinced that Alan Dulles had drawn heavily on Carl Hume's work on
Exactly.
UFOs as a source of inspiration when he was manipulating the whole Adamski contactee thing. He basically was the probably one of the brainchilds behind the whole Adamski contactee story.
Yeah. And you might ask, well, why, what's the significance of this? This isn't Gnosticism just, uh an antiquated Christian heresy, who cares? Well, it begins to make more sense when you look at Gnostic soteriology. Of course, Gnostic soteriology begins off as being ostensibly individualistic, radically individualistic. The Gnostics eschewed, the communal elements of the Orthodox Christian faith. Orthodox Christianity uh, holds aloft a communal view of salvation. We are saved, but we're saved as a church. We're saved as the historical community founded by Jesus Christ. So you don't, there's no lone rangers, so to speak, in Orthodox Christianity. Not so with Gnosticism. In Gnosticism, you're all lone rangers,
Mhm.
and salvation is a personal path. And interestingly enough, you hear this sort of soteriology reiterated ad nauseum today by most, modern American evangelicals, Protestants, what have you. It's your personal path. It's your personal path. So Gnosticism espouses this ostensibly individualistic soteriology. But what is the end point of Gnostic salvation? What for the Gnostic constitutes being saved? Well, it's reabsorption into the pleroma,
Mhm.
or the true divinity. And what is the pleroma? It's this singular deific power within which individuality is lost. Individuality is submerged into
Mhm.
this sea of consciousness. It's basically self-erasure.
Mhm.
And if you look, you know,
Very
what one
Buddhist
what
too.
yes, yeah, absolutely. And look at what did Gnostics consider a symptom of the corruption of creation? It was an order of differentiated beings. They derided the fact that no one being, no one person is exactly the same. They derided the fact that there was this order of differentiation that defined the material cosmos. They
Mhm.
and in that sense they kind of constituted normative monist, that in that while they did subscribe to this radical metaphysical dualism, between spirit and matter. They believed that no such division should have ever existed, and that all of reality should have been this undifferentiated absolute, and
Mhm.
that undifferentiated absolute should be an exclusively spiritual, incorporeal reality. And so where am I going with all this Gnostic soteriology? Well, when you ideologize that soteriology, and it has been ideologized in multiple forms. It was ideologized by George Friedrich Hegel, and then of course his disciple Karl Marx. It's ideologized in the form of Hitlerian fascism. It's even ideologized in the form of neoconservatism. But you ideologize that soteriology, and you immanentize all its articles of faith, in particular the pleroma. What form does the pleroma assume in the new neo-Gnostic scheme of things? The pleroma, the undifferentiated absolute, is the state, capital S state, which of course, Hegel regarded as the march of God on earth.
Mhm.
The state, the omnipotent apotheosized state, is God, and the individual is subordinated to the collective within that pleroma. And so we have the political religion of collectivism.
Mhm.
And so with the promotion of, this neo-Gnostic narrative through the poison pill of the UFO myth, through the transmission belt of the UFO myth, you have the insinuation of collectivism. You have the insinuation of very forms of governance that are not very friendly towards representative forms of government, towards parliaments or congresses. It's extremely technocratic.
Jacques Vallée,
Yeah,
Jacques Vallée, one of the premier ufologists out there, he even in one of his books, The Messengers of Deception, he even notes, like, if you look at a lot of these UFO cults, they have very little of the democratic spirit in them.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
Very
yeah,
anti-democratic.
like the Raelian movement, which is
Mhm.
for a time was UFO, the largest UFO cult in the world. Its founder, what was his?
Rael.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Rael, but what was his real name?
Verlaine,
Vorlon or
Verlaine.
something.
Brilliant. Jacques,
Yeah,
French guy.
he, yeah, he had He had some bizarre name. The funny thing is, it's like I guess he's now hanging out in some tropical paradise uh, with a ton of chicks acting as his harem and all.
Well, yeah, they were a space cult and a sex cult at the same time, and they were
Yeah,
actually in Playboy
yeah,
being
yeah,
interviewed about space sex and space
yeah,
babies and integrating, aliens with humans. And
yeah.
you said, so would you say that sci-fi is, I mean, that Gnosticism is like a prototype of science fiction?
Yes, yes. And I'm trying to recall which author actually. There's a really good article over the Gnostic elements of science fiction, but I wish I could remember the author's name, but in that article, he basically states that science fiction is, for all practical purposes, by and large, uh, really just not new form of Gnostic parable,
Hmm.
and
The
but
Wachowski brothers kind of
yeah,
hint at it too, and
yeah,
they see like motion
yeah.
pictures and their particular
But
genre of motion
yeah,
pictures, which is science fiction, as kind of like a way of like evangelizing for
yeah.
Gnosticism and
But
Hmm.
if you look at the Raelian movement, just to reiterate the technocratic elements of that movement, Rael and many of his religious tracts talk about a geniocracy, the rule by a cognitive elite. Well,
Hmm.
how this is simply technocracy under another appellation.
Hmm.
And you see how through the poison pill of the UFO myth, we have the insinuation of those political arrangements that are most advantageous to the elite.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, that you see a political arrangement that's more closely aligned with that espoused by H.G. Wells, who, of course, uh, uh, H.G. Wells promoted a democracy of experts.
Hmm.
He basically believed that democratic processes, voting, legislating, what have you, were reserved for an elite few, for the experts, uh, for those who laid claim to a socio-political gnosis. And he dubbed such men samurai. And yeah, and of course, H.G. Wells also promoted alien myths, through in particular War of the Worlds,
Do you think
which
these technocrats are, or these technocratic elite is going to be the ones who have integrated themselves with the technology, like physically and mentally and emotionally? Because getting back to Grok real fast, if I recall, I read that book maybe like 20 years ago, but it's if you say I grok you, that means I understand you on a deeper level, like on the deep, like, when in the Bible they say he knew her, like that
yeah,
intimate. So when you grok somebody, and he's a Martian, I think he was a Earthling that was raised on Mars and had to come back, but they're a very sexually liberated race, the Martians are, and they grok each other. They're like very poly type of society. And Michael Valentine, I think, was the protagonist's name. He's here to like spread the love of Mars on Earth, and grokking is a part of that.
rock and roll.
Yeah, grok and roll, exactly. So yeah, it's this like merging of boundaries. And your book is called Invoking the Beyond. So can I ask you, what are they invoking?
Well, okay. So when we use the term beyond, uh, what we use that term to denote is any uh, any power that ontologically and epistemologically dwarfs humanity.
Hmm.
Uh, so uh, ontologically, this power just surpasses all of our known categories of being. Epistemologically, it surpasses all of our categories of knowledge. And the beyond its existence as a narrative construct, which is invoked in the realm of politics in order to overwhelm national governments, was made possible by uh, yet another Enlightenment theoretician, which was, of course, Immanuel Kant. And you look at Immanuel Kant's theory of knowledge, and it's very much derivative of Gnosticism. Immanuel Kant holds that we cannot know the Dengon Sikh, or the thing in and of itself, that external reality is perennially imperceptible. And so again, you have the echoes of the Gnostic suspicion of the external world. The external world is a deceptive simulacrum, or in this case, our own epistemic faculties, our own sensory faculties are basically suboptimal, somehow designed suboptimally. It must have been just imparted to us by a deceptive demiurge.
Hmm.
But with the external world rendered a terra incognita, an unknown continent, a world that's just perennially imperceptible and unknowable, you have this rise of a new class of myth makers, who now populate terra incognita with their own surrogates for the divine. And we name, I think, what, four iterations of the beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have the wrathful earth goddess, which of course you see invoked largely by radical environmentalists and environmentalist interests that are closely aligned with the technocrats,
That's
like,
what season 4 of True Detective was about. What you just said.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And
Really?
Yeah.
It's a shame I stopped at season one. I thought the season one was the perfect show, and then I thought that it just went downhill from there and everything. And so the is that who the antagonist is in the
Yeah.
fourth season?
Like literally the
uh,
wrathful Earth goddess taking revenge on
yeah, and
technocrats and polluters.
yeah,
Huh.
yeah, and interestingly enough, that iteration of the beyond easily segues into the UFO myth,
Hmm.
in the beyond invoked as extraterrestrial gods,
Hmm.
because that iteration of the beyond it intimates a pantheistic divinity, an intramundane divinity.
Hmm.
Um, all of the universe as we know it is literally alive, alive in a literal sense. It's a pantheistic divinity. It's an immanent God.
Hmm.
And out of out of this casus sui order, out of it emerges species, and they just kind of emerge through spontaneous generation, a la Darwinism,
Hmm.
a la evolutionary processes, and birthed from these primordial soups are the appendages of this pantheistic divinity, which are organisms,
Hmm.
um, the various organisms that populate the universe. And as appendages of that intramundane divinity, they qualify as divine as well. And so, because
The alien
aliens,
covenant, uh,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, because they emerged, you know, they emerged from this pantheistic divinity. They themselves are divine,
Hmm.
and then of course, from there we slowly but surely segue into autotheism, or the worship of self, and we segue into apotheosis, the apotheosis of humanity,
Hmm.
which is a grotesque parody of the Orthodox Christian belief in theosis.
Hmm.
You basically see man becoming God, because if the extraterrestrials themselves are God, and we are evolutionarily preordained to become as they are. You see that theme reiterated ad nauseum, like for instance in Battlestar Galactica.
Hmm.
Uh, recall when these bright numinous beings resurrect Apollo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just so the 1978 one,
yeah,
not the
not
2004 one.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the original Glenn Larson one. When they resurrect Apollo, he's been killed by some villain who is Lucifer, but Lucifer interpreted according to an inverted hermeneutic. Um, um, he's resurrected by these numinous beings, and they're talking to Starbuck and Apollo's girlfriend, and they tell him, "As we are, you shall become."
Hmm.
And so you see that this theme of the divinity from the divinity from outer space, the beyond invoked as extraterrestrial gods, intimating our own apotheosis,
Hmm.
uh, our 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 own ascension to the status of being God. And actually, this theme was just reiterated once more. Um, um, uh, it was shoot, sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. Uh, it it was just recently revealed. I forget who was claimed that he was privy to information concerning alien human hybridization experiments.
Oh, I just saw that. Matt
Yeah,
Gates.
Matt
Matt
Gaetz, yeah.
Gates, yeah,
Yeah.
Matt Gates, and with that, with this revelation that somehow somehow we're the product of we're the product of the uh, uh, the product of alien human coupling. We you now have this myth of celestial bloodlines
Hmm.
being
Hmm.
tacitly conveyed, which Jean-Jacques Vallée warned about in his work. He wrote about how contactee philosophies typically include the belief in higher races, totalitarian systems that will circumvent and ultimately abolish democracy. Uh, the reinterpretation of the scriptural understanding of the sons of God taking the daughters of man. This completely reinterpreted, recasted version of that narrative now, and you see the premises being laid, the groundwork being laid for a celestial bloodline myth.
Hmm.
And this, not surprisingly, the late Professor John Mack, he proposed that UFO abductees descended from an entirely different genetic type than all of us. And as a result, uh, they 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 were in possession of, for all practical purposes, a gnosis. They were a result of human and alien coupling, and this divergent genetic heritage has endowed abductees with a greater mental flexibility and a heightened sensitivity to higher modes of experience. Um, and so abductees just basically become the new mystics and the new shamans.
Well, I was just
Um,
gonna say this can create a new kind of caste system, right? Like
exactly,
we have the
exactly.
royal blood from the aliens, King Anunnakis or whatever, and
Yeah, yeah,
um,
absolutely, absolutely. You have the you have the lesser Lilliputian races, and then you have the divine bloodlines, the celestial bloodlines.
yeah.
The dangers of that sort of thinking are fairly obvious. It's fairly axiomatic. If a racial hierarchy holds sway,
We we
then it stands to reason that some races are closer to perfection than others.
we we
Right.
we pers we personally believe that this trope might have existed in a different form sans the aliens some time ago. That I mean, this idea of a bloodline that's elevated and different from everybody else and unique and perfect. If you go back into the not into the to the early, well, I think it was around the early 80s. There was a book that was released, and it shook the foundations of a lot of people's faith, called Holy Blood, Holy Grail.
Yeah.
And it was written, yeah, it was written by Bajent Lee and Lincoln. And, it's positing that Jesus survived the cross. And by survived, I don't mean resurrected, I mean he never died
Hmm.
on the cross. He goes and sires children with Mary Magdalene in France, and they become the Merovingian bloodline. And so the descendants of Jesus are over there in Europe and have formed European royalty, and so it's them, it's this holy bloodline that are heirs to Christ promises, and not the church, not the church suppressed all this. And what many people don't realize is that Bajent Lee and Lincoln, um, they it might have been a CIA agent that actually concocted this myth with them, or helped them to perpetrate this myth, because um, Miles Copeland, who was a big mover and shaker in the CIA's political action division. He actually knew Bajent Lee and Lincoln. He told them a story that they passed on in their book, The Dead Sea Scrolls Deception, where he says, "Oh, when I was over in Beirut, we found some books of the Bible and they got blown off the roof when we were trying to look at them at the rooftop at our station. But they're actual books that might undermine orthodoxy, both capital O and lowercase o in Christianity. But Miles Copeland, his family, his some of his one of his children actually went on to actually do an opera. Either it was an opera or some kind of musical about Holy Blood, Holy Grail. A kind of
Hmm.
nod, show basically their way of kind of saying that they were kind of behind this all. But you look at Miles Copeland. He and Bob Mandelstam had this project at the Political Action Division in the CIA called OHP, Occultism in High Places, where they saw that occult groups and occult figures could be used to influence different heads of states in different countries. And so through OHP, they reached out to certain groups such as the Scientologists, who have their own kind of UFO beliefs.
Yeah,
And
which is again derivative of Jacob Alevi's latter-day interplanetary Gnosticism. Herrick actually, in his book Scientific
yeah,
Mythologies, makes a strong case for that Scientology, you look at it in Alevi's view, we were apostate angels. In L. Ron Hubbard's
yeah.
view, we're imprisoned thetans.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, a long way around Harvey's barn, is that you see with Miles Copeland, you see a nexus point between this whole holy bloodline idea
Hmm.
and the UFO deception,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
one of those ways that it might have found its way into this emerging UFO religion. So
Yeah.
So look at what we went to Roswell on our last road trip we got through, and they had this picture on the wall. They
Oh
had
God,
a
that's
gallery of
cheap.
art, but look at what he's wearing.
yeah, is that a cross?
Yeah.
It's oh
Yeah.
wow.
So
Yeah.
it's a gray with a cross necklace. And so I'm like, is that where they're going with this? Is they're gonna
Yes.
say that Christ is the alien
Hmm.
entity, or they made up religion, all the religions belong to them. And then I also got this t-shirt. I don't know if you could see that. It says out of this world,
Out of this world,
Out of
yeah.
this world.
alien. So are
No,
they?
that's where they're you're definitely right there. That's where they're going with
Yes,
this. I mean,
an exotheological Christ.
when
Yeah.
when
Uh-huh.
when when Linda Moulton Howe was shown documents by Richard Doty, and Richard Doty was a notorious disinformation agent with the AFOSI, and he looks and not only was he a part of a faction of the AFOSI that had kind of had drifted off and because of Cold War paranoia and had become less than ethical and less than moral because of the Cold War paranoia at the time. But he was also, it looks like he was also either a part of or representative of the Aviary, which was a group of UFO disinformation agents, deep state actors that were disinformation agents pushing themselves off as whistleblowers. But when he's shown that information to Linda Moulton Howe, intending to use her as a disinformation amplifier, one of the things that she read in there was that basically that Jesus Christ was a product of extraterrestrial, I guess, like reproduction with humans or something to
Some
that.
sort of hybridization
Yeah,
experiment.
yeah,
Mhm.
and she ended up passing off this disinformation as if it was she gullible because she was gullible, like a lot of these people are, and she ended up putting it in her book, An Alien
Yeah.
Harvest.
And
You
these new
So
heretical Christologies are nothing new. Paul mentioned earlier, the Bavarian Illuminati, which of course was, a subversive organization during, surprise, surprise, the Enlightenment, which, the 18th century Enlightenment seems to be the crucible for this UFO myth, or at least the crucible for the neo-Gnostic hermeneutic, according to which the phenomena is understood.
Mhm.
Uh, but Adam Weishaupt promoted a heretical Christology. He promoted this socialist Jesus, who came to abolish all national governments and teach the brotherhood of man.
Yeah,
It was
'cause you mentioned the Jim Jones was a socialist sort of communist UFO, and a lot of these UFO cults have utopianism kind of
Yeah, yeah,
baked in there, right?
yeah, yeah. They're very democratic. Again, like a really good example again is like the Raelian movement. The Raelian movement, of course, with the promotion of a geniocracy, which is just really technocracy under another appellation, but also the Raelian movement, in one of his tracks, Rael uh, likens human society. So he basically biologizes human society. He likens it to a social organism. He basically says, the appendages are subordinated to the brain and what have you. And likewise, all society, all branches of society are subordinated to the state. Or in his case, the geniocracy, the rule by geniuses. This is vintage Ernest Haeckel.
Mhm.
Ernest Haeckel uh, promoted the very same sort of uh, biologized view of the state, this notion of a social organism. So you can see where this it becomes a transmission vehicle, really, for these ideas.
the aliens' political aspirations for us always seem to be something like fascism or something like communism.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
They
Or oblivion, complete and total oblivion
Mhm.
altogether,
Like
as a
childhood's end.
childhood's end, which is childhood end is just vintage Gnosticism, complete and total vintage Gnosticism, and there at the end you have the complete and total abolition of humanity entirely, and the reabsorption of uh, pure human mentality into the overmind, which is nothing more than just Arthur C. Clarke's version of the Pleroma. And
Hmm.
there Arthur C. Clarke throughout his work seems to intimate his exposure to Gnostic work. He talks continually about pure mentality, which just seems to be his own euphemistic way of speaking about disembodied bliss, because it's always the endpoint, the terminus for humanity always seems to be disembodiment in
Hmm.
his work, not just in Childhood's End, but also 2001 Space Odyssey, 2012, and then what was the last one of his Space Odyssey trilogy? It,
3001?
yeah,
3000.
3001. In 3001, lo and behold, humanity has so commingled itself with machines that they no longer have physical forms. They're,
Hmm.
that now they're completely and totally disembodied, which is ironic given the fact that he hails from a scientific materialist heritage. So why all of a sudden are we talking in terms of vapors and in terms of disembodiment? Doesn't that seem to be at odds with your scientific materialist conviction that matter is all there is? Well,
Seem to also be at odds with his minor attraction, if
yeah,
you
oh my God. Yeah. He's kind of a
cause
minor attracted individual, but yeah, well, it turns out that, modern science, at least the Baconian formulation thereof, has exhibited this very ironic allergy towards matter.
Hmm.
Um, with Sir Francis Bacon and his divesting the cosmos of a telos, his rejection of teleology, he reduces all of matter to what Heidegger would have called Bestand, a standing reserve of malleable material.
Hmm.
And from from there, it's you're only a few short steps away from the complete and total rejection of matter, in a very Gnostic sense, altogether. And it really doesn't come. It's not nearly as counterintuitive as you would think, because there's a dialectical commonality between the anti-materialism of Gnosticism and the materialism of the scientific materialist, and that dialectical commonality is dysteleology, the view of everything as being purposeless, meaningless, a dysteleological universe, like the sort that you see proposed by H.P. Lovecraft, where it's a completely mindless, purposeless universe that's indifferent to us. Um, but yeah, I mean, the endpoint there. The endpoint for the scientific materialist seems to be quite identical to the Gnostic.
Hmm. Just complete atomization of your personality to become an embryo of a god, like in 2001.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Be one man floating in space in some sort of gestation,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And so, how do I ask this? Okay, when I go to the post office and we joke around and I say, if the aliens invade, it's not real, don't like it's all fake and gay, right? And but then they're like, well, what is it? So they're like, you don't believe in aliens? I'm like, no, I do. They're just not what you think they are.
I
So
know where you're going with this. Yeah.
what the show is going to be fake, but the entities are real. So how would you explain that?
I think that the person that probably put it best was Charles Upton. He's a perennialist philosopher, and he's looked at this in several different books. And his books, Cracks in the Great Wall, The Alien Disclosure, Deception, I think it was called, and Vectors of the Counter Initiation.
Can you say his name one more time?
Charles Upton.
Okay.
U Upton. don't let his perennialism, throw you off or, be off-putting and all. It's actually some really, really good work. And he points, he says, well, there's some that say it's all a black ops. It's all a covert operation. And then there's others that say, oh, it's all some kind of preternatural phenomenon. He's like, actually, it's both.
Mhm.
Actually, both. It's both. Um, there okay. There is some advanced R&D that's being used to perpetrate this.
Drones.
Yeah, drones are being used. We go into drones in our latest series, Deception Through Disclosure. How they've been playing a role in this latest phase of the alien
Yeah, you
deception.
can check that series out at the Decoding Culture Foundation website. They have all the installments so far.
Yeah. And so there's all this advanced R&D that's being used to help create the illusion, but then you'll come across some incidents where the where what's seen in the sky defies physics. It defies what something that starts off as a circle, but then becomes cigar shape. It elongates and then goes back down, or something that appears and then starts to kind of fade out as if it's having difficulty
Materialize.
materializing in
Yeah.
our.
Yeah,
uh,
Jay loves putting on those videos late at night when we're falling asleep, like the blurry UFOs, and I hate him because he's like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It's so frustrating. What is that? I don't know."
Yeah. But so part of the deception is advanced R&D.
Mhm.
Okay. It's there. It's real. These technologies that are very much terrestrial based and that do some amazing things. And what they do is they put them in the sky, knowing that people will attribute them to aliens, or knowing that their own allies in the media, in the mockingbird press, will attribute it to aliens, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
But then there's also deep state actors that are not just spooks, but they're also
By antiquity standards.
they're also occultists. They're
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
they're practitioners.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They're wizards. They're sorcerers. They're the
Conjurers, invocation people.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And they're contributing. They're contributing by calling these things up, so to speak.
Mhm.
Right.
you know and the examples of deep state actors that fall into this category are legion. John B. Alexander, thanatologist, and into every kind of weird occult thing that you ever heard of, but was also a Green Beret, was involved in I believe he was involved in the Phoenix program, worked under John Singlob in General John Singlob when he was over in Vietnam. Michael Aquino,
Mhm.
Temple of Set.
he was Army intelligence. He was, but he's
Also
also,
minor attracted.
yeah, also
Yeah.
minor in all likelihood, yeah.
Yeah.
But he was also the head of a satanic, group, the Temple of Set, that was theistic. It was a theistic. They were theistic Satanists. He took his Satanism to heart. He took it seriously. As opposed to LaVey, it's like it was kind of atheistic Satanism. He was like, no, this stuff is real. These beings are real. Harold Putoff, who is right now participating in this latest round of deception as part of the whole OSAP ATIP kind of configuration there. He was in Scientology for the longest time. You
Yeah.
know, and that's just three people. The list goes
Right.
on and on of other. other individuals. One more I'll name, Sybil Leek. Sybil Leek was an actual witch that worked with Operation Often, a CIA operation that actually started trying to weaponize Satanism. And Sybil Leek even said, she said, these things are demonic manifestations, to you referring to UFOs. So, so some of these,
Looking for
individual,
a book by her. Oh, here we go.
you got Sybil Leek's book?
Look at that.
There
Oh,
she
yeah,
is.
yeah.
Yeah. I saw old vintage. Yeah, there she is. I saw old vintage films of her on YouTube. The place that I learned about her was in a book by, I got to remember this name. Let me see if I can find it here. Um, I don't have the book at home. It's in my library at home, and gosh, well, I'll have to. I don't want to gum up the works by. I'll have to find it when I get at home. Get home, but I found out about it in a book that was written by the same dude that wrote Gideon Spies.
Mm,
What's his name?
Gideon Spies.
He wrote the book. He wrote the book Gideon Spies.
Jeez, Louise.
Uh,
You can't be more explicit than that.
Summoning
um,
up evil spirits.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and
Gordon Thomas.
Gordon.
Gordon Thomas wrote a book where, and I can't remember the name of the book. I remember he wrote Gordon Gideon Spies, but I sure as hell don't remember the name of the book that he wrote. But he wrote a book where he goes into operation often, and that's where I found out about Sybil Leak.
Hmm.
Um, but but anyways, you have you have this whole section of deep state actors that are contributing to the deception, to this alien deception, by conjuring things up,
Mhm.
by pulling things from
Yeah.
an ontological intermediary plane, as Father Malachi Martin put it, and all.
So the
And
Beyond. Right.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, and that's actually quite that's scary when you consider that,
Right. Well,
human R&D, there's you're going to hit a wall at some point.
yeah,
And also, the weapons that would be deployed by human R&D and the propulsion systems would be a dead giveaway at some point. There's
Mm.
people that are smart enough out there to say, look, that's human, that can be replicated. We
yeah.
can do, but
Do
this is
you
being,
remember what, real quick, in Independence Day, they actually said that their technology, Area 51, was reverse engineered from the Roswell crash. Remember that?
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, what's funny about that? Bill Corso in his book, The Day After Roswell, and Bill Corso was one of the disinformation agents. He was part of these circles. He knew John B. Alexander. He was very close with the Robert Bigelow circle that spawned this latest round of disinformation agents. But Corso says, "Oh, this stuff is alien." But then at the beginning of the book, he says, "Well, I called in Erman Oberth and Werner von Braun because it replicated a kind of German technology." And all.
Oh, okay.
And it's like, well, it's like roll back,
Yeah, yeah. Did you,
let's
so is
rewind
it
that.
alien? Is it from
You
Zeta
just
Reticuli or is it from
you
Germany?
just said it was
Yeah.
alien.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said it was
He
alien,
contradicts
but now
himself.
you're saying it replicates a German technology, and I had to call in Werner von Braun and Erman Oberth to try help decipher it.
Well, it's
So
actually ancient Tibetan or something crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Well,
I mean, but the scary thing about that aspect of the deception, the conjurers that are involved in this whole thing, is that they are now they're now dealing with forces with whom they don't dictate the terms.
no, the
You don't
tail is wagging the
you
dog.
don't dictate the
Yeah.
terms. And something that Charles Upton points out in his books is that the diabolical, the demonic always leads the always leads the magician to believe that the magician is firmly in control of things, is firmly in control of the phenomenon when
Hmm.
when he controls none of it.
Right.
He
Faust.
controls none of
Right.
it.
Well,
Right.
And
this illusion of control over over these preternatural forces stems from a misidentification of what the forces actually are.
Hmm.
Because, and this is gonna sound counterintuitive, but uh, I believe David Bentley Hart, with whom I'm at variance with over a multiplicity of issues. He calls himself Orthodox, but the guy is a syncretist and what have you. But he nevertheless does make a very salient observation concerning magic and modern science. He basically says magic is essentially a species of materialism
Hmm.
because it invokes agencies beyond the visible sphere, but it does not regard those forces as supernatural or transcendent in the theological sense. But they're at most they're preternatural. They're merely the more subtle and potent aspects of the physical cosmos.
Hmm.
Hermetic magic, modern science, in its Baconian formulation
yeah,
are both concerned with these hidden forces within the material order, forces that are morally neutral, that can be leveraged towards ends both fair and foul.
yeah.
And
See,
so,
these deep state elements that are,
yeah, what they believe they're dealing with, they believe they're dealing with strictly physical material forces that are just heretofore imperceptible, but will be later identified by more advanced scientific methods. That's
Hmm.
what they're dealing with.
yeah, a lot of these individuals, these deep state elements that are conjuring this up, that's what they say. They're
Yeah,
like, well, this is just part of Mother Nature.
yeah,
Science just hasn't caught
yeah,
up to understanding,
yeah,
but
yeah.
one day it will. And
Uh,
nothing could be further
Further
from
from the
the
truth.
truth
Yeah,
because this is preternatural. This
right.
is something that's preternatural, defies any metric. It can't be measured
Yeah,
in a lab
it's not
and all. And
quantifiably or empirically demonstrable.
and then also, some of the elements there also that are, conjuring these things up, some of these deep state elements that are conjuring it up, or what you brought up, Brett. Brett called it, what did he say? It was pragmatist. It's
Metaphysical
metaphysical
pragmatism.
pragmatist.
Yeah, it was a very
They,
good way.
very good way of putting it. These guys are are metaphysical pragmatists.
Yeah,
They're like, I don't know how the damn thing works, and I don't care. All I know is that it
yeah,
works, so use
yeah.
it.
In the
Hmm.
words of Card, make it so.
Yeah,
You
just
know,
use it. I mean,
ma-
Or
it,
go fast and break things, I think is one of the technocrats' mottos. Have you heard? Move fast and break things. So yeah.
it'll win us victory in the on the psychological battlefield. So use the damn thing, and who cares what happens,
right.
you know? And yeah, so they're bringing things from there over here
Hmm.
that that they can't put back. You can't put back the genie back in the bottle. And so, God, literally, God only knows what happens now that these things
Yeah,
are here.
yeah.
And
Hmm.
a long way around the Harvey's barn, but I hope that answers your question. Yeah, I think it's both. It's not just it's not all this phenomena is not just
Yeah.
it defies one single explanation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And some of it's advanced R&D, some of it is
Y-
preternatural in everything in
Yeah.
nature.
Well, so in my new project that I'm working on, I'm studying really hard about like Sumeria and Mesopotamia and Babylon and the first cities, Uruk and Eridu. And I don't know if this is in your book or not, but like, just the idea of like hybrid beings at the beginning of time, sort of mixing with humans, like in Genesis 6, to create these giants.
The Abkalu, is that what it's called? The Abkalu, or is that, am I thinking of something?
That's like the
Yeah.
watery place, I think, where
Oh,
they are from. Um,
gotcha.
but yeah, so you have these like metaphysical beings that are technologically superior and genetically superior, let's say, that are oppressing people even before the flood. So they have these tales about like what was society like when the gods lived among us and they had to go somewhere else. So they're like some kind of physical being that uses vehicles to move places, and they were displaced after the deluge. And then a remnant of them actually came back to haunt people after the flood. Is this something that, is this what they're conjuring? Is what I'm asking. Like, are these the same type of entities that the magicians would be trying to contact, like the ancient gods?
I think that it's the same thing that was conjured in antiquity. I understand things a little bit differently from antiquity. Okay, I don't understand. I don't see Genesis 6 as these things literally coming down
Uh-huh.
and and, and making it
Yeah,
with women.
the Anarchy
And
interpretation. Yeah.
I think that, if you look at the Bible and it talks about the bed of Og, it
Uh-huh.
talks and the bed of Og is basically, this huge bed, and it's like, my gosh, the man is well, yeah, it's that that introduces the idea in scripture, that introduces an idea that's that's widely understood in history, as these ritual beds. And what would happen is that and so, the bed of Og was a ritual bed. These ritual beds existed in different portions of the Near East, Middle East, and as I understand it, they were even in Japan, among their elite. But what I understand you know, um, is that the way it worked is that a temple priest would don a mask of his god, and they would take a slave woman or a temple prostitute. She would get on the bed with him. They would copulate, and the child is still very much human
Mm-hmm.
because the biology involved there, the physiology is there, is all human, but the child is has been consecrated to this thing, to
Mm-hmm.
this, and could very well be what a Christian would understand as demonized or possessed.
A moon
And
child or like
yeah, yeah,
um,
like the Moonchild, exactly, like Jack Parsons making it, with, trying to create the homunculus and that sort of thing. I think that that um, phenomenon in antiquity is what we're seeing replicated today and all. That's what I think, insofar as, the weirdness leaves us to have to speculate in a lot of respects. So,
well, I think that makes sense with what you guys were bringing up with the prior of Zion, the Holy Blood, Holy Grail, like the bloodline of Jesus. So if they can get people to think that, um, these bloodlines were hybrid of some kind of higher being from back then, and now they're back, like let's say Planet X and Nibiru. I'm sure you guys have heard of
oh
those.
yeah, oh yeah,
So they're like back to visit us and see how their plantation is
yeah.
going,
How
and
are the kids?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
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 I think so. And like I said, like that whole holy blood, holy grail thing is just steeped in covert political circles that people don't realize it. I mean, Miles Copeland had a very close relationship with Agent Lee and Lincoln.
Mhm,
He contributed to the Dead Sea Scroll deception book that they wrote. This story that suggests that, hey, there might be text out there that undermine the orthodox, both capital O and lowercase o,
mhm,
understanding of the Bible. And then his son, and I believe it was Stuart. I believe it was Stuart Copeland, the drummer to with the Police, with Sting and
mhm.
all. He did a rock opera of some sort based on Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and it was kind of like their nod saying, "Yeah, we recreated this and stuff." And like they just took that Holy Blood, Holy Grail BS and transplanted it in the realm of ufology. And now, instead of just being, a bloodline from the Middle East, it's bloodlines
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
up there, from out there, you know.
Interestingly enough, that the person,
And that's what I believe Matt Gaetz is
yeah,
repleting in spite of himself, without even knowing what the hell he's talking about,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
The most proximate origins of the alien human hybridization narrative, I think, could be considered none other than Francis Crick, who basically advanced the theory of panspermia.
Hmm.
Uh, and interestingly enough, Francis Crick was also steeped in the eugenics movement, and he wrote on topics such as the genetics of twins, which echoes eerily of Joseph Mengele, who was also just preoccupied with twins. And he advanced selective breeding, the curtailment of reproduction among certain segments of the population, uh, sterilization of the so-called unfit. All these ideas, Sir Francis Crick uh, subscribed to, and he was also the one who, I believe, he coined the neologism of panspermia. I believe that's a term of his coinage, which of course, panspermia holds that this world was seeded by uh, extraterrestrial intelligences, either through a directed or undirected process.
Which begs the question, who seeded their world?
Yeah,
How the
exactly.
hell did they get
Right,
here?
right. All of
So
a sudden, you're right back to an infinite regress of
yeah,
finite material
it's
causes.
all of a sudden it's turtles all the way
Yeah,
down.
which
Yeah.
has no explanatory power whatsoever. It's one of the frustrating things. One of several philosophical uh, philosophical dead ends of the ufological movement,
Yeah, I mean,
as though this explains something, as though there's any explanatory power, in a narrative such as the one we see in like
yeah,
Prometheus. Oh,
yeah.
we're the products of the engineers.
The, the the UFO myth, in whatever form or manifestation it comes, is analogous to boxcars after boxcars after boxcars, and you're like, guys, at some point we're going to have to get to the actual engine. We're going to have to get to the train that has the principle of motion in it,
Hmm.
and all.
But
You know,
is itself unmoved.
yeah, you
And
got to get to an unmoved mover,
yeah,
and
You
they
saying
never.
that buff alien, hot alien is not
Yeah.
real? Gay space brothers, as the Pope would say, if the aliens arrived, I would baptize them, right? Because there are space.
yeah, yeah. Uh, and have you ever noticed also there's the chronically reiterated theme of sexual perversion
I
with
was just
with
gonna say, why do they always want to touch your
yeah,
butt?
yeah. I mean,
Well, we were
it's
talking
always
about Arthur C. Clarke. That
Arthur
goes
C.
back to
Clarke.
him,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
minor attracted individual. And, I'll say that instead. I guess the P word, I don't know if that's still something that gets you pulled and
Say
everything.
PDF.
PDF.
yes, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, but he was PDF.
Yeah.
He, I mean, the evidence suggests, it strongly suggests that that's what he was, It's yeah, there's always like this
yeah.
kind of
And
sexual.
wouldn't you know it, that's a proclivity that is quite endemic to the ruling class,
Hmm.
as is evidenced by the Epstein files, which are getting weirder and weirder.
Who was a
And
panspermist? Epstein was, right? He was making all
Yeah,
his
yeah,
space
yeah,
babies at that
and he
Zorro
was also,
Ranch.
yeah, and he also espoused some tacit affinities for transhumanism,
Uh-huh.
for yeah, for transhumanism.
well, I know in the first installment of our series right now, Deception Through Disclosure, I go over the nexus point between UFO disinformation and the perverts, because I mean, uh, uh, okay, so um, the among these UFO disinformation agents is a guy by the name of David Grush. Now, and he was making the headlines about a year to 2 years ago. And what many people don't realize is that David Grush, when he first came out with all these revelations, and which was he would say, "Oh, there's this and there's that, and we got these ships and everything." And every time that they'd ask for evidence, he said, "Oh, I want to move to a skiff for that." And a skiff is like a secure compartmentalized information facility, basically. So, in other words, he would tell representatives in a secret place about, supposedly show his hand there, show the evidence. We were never shown evidence. He just gave us wild tales.
Yeah.
But what many people don't realize is that David Grush was represented by a lawyer from the Compass Rose law firm. And if you look at Compass Rose law firm, it's all spooks. It was even started by a spook. Andrew Bakaj, who founded it, was CIA. But among those lawyers with Compass Rose was a guy by the name of Mark Zaid. And Mark Zaid, according to Zero Hedge, and Zero Hedge shown his Twitter feed on this. The guy bragged. He said, "quote unquote, I help get security clearances for guys with child porn issues or child porn problems and stuff." So there's this nexus point there. You got all of these disinformation agents out that are DoD centered. They're out of the Pentagon. They're out of the Department of Defense. And you also got like the perverts that are at the DoD,
Hmm.
because they're getting security clearances thanks to guys like Mark Zaid. And and when you look at Operation Flicker, where they were finding this stuff on servers there at the DoD, those guys with Operation Flicker, they were cut off. They were told to stop investigating, even though it's a big counterintelligence issue. Like what if one of these guys are getting blackmailed because the stuff is on their server? Well, and Al Qaeda says, well, either give us some fresh intel, or we'll turn you over to the authorities. We'll let people know.
Hmm.
It. Yeah. So there's this nexus there between between the perverts and the UFO disinformation agents, and that intersection seems to be at the DoD. It seems to be with the Pentagon.
Yeah.
So
And you also see kind of sex ritual magic being intimated by the author of Communion.
Whitley Strieber.
Whitley Strieber, yeah, and constantly invoking mythic archetypes with that
Yeah.
Ashtar and what have you. So it's you have once again this bizarre intersection between you know sexual perversion and occult beliefs.
yeah, he had a run in with what he believes is the female alien when he was in Rome. And what many people don't know is that he actually was doing a documentary over the Process Church.
Hmm.
And Process, his time in Rome kind of corresponds with the time where members of Process were in Rome as well. And so it's been suggested by researchers like Jason Horsley that his run-in with this female alien creature in Rome is actually a screen memory of his kind of interaction with Process while he was there, and
Hmm.
that female alien might have been Mary McLean, who was with Robert Grimston, and that they might have got it on.
Hmm.
And what he has is a screen memory of it. A screen memory is when an authentic memory is taken and something is overwritten on top of it. Like you remember the episode of Jose Chung? It came from of X-Files. Jose
Yeah.
Chung came from outer space. Remember they put that girl under, and
Uh-huh.
first she remembers it's aliens, and they're saying, "You're doing this for the good of your planet." They
Yeah.
put her, they put her under again. They hypnotize her again, and she remembers all these military men there, and instead of
Yeah.
saying you're doing this for the good of your planet, they're
You're
saying
doing your
you're doing this for the good of your country.
yeah.
Oh,
So
huh.
Yeah. So
some people
all
that's a screen memory.
yeah,
Some people think that he
where you
might,
have these layers of embellishment and distortion.
but yeah, some people think that that's what Communion guy was Whitley Strieber was experiencing there.
Oh,
So
okay. So doing the samba with the aliens is just a screen memory. That was the goofiest scene I think I've seen in a long time where he's dancing with the bossa nova with the little black alien and
Yeah, yeah.
so crazy. Well, it seems like sex is the element that sort of opens the portal for these things to enter, right? And I'm thinking of obviously, Crowley and Jack Parsons
Right.
and Lom. So, that guy with the bulbous head that looks like the gray that we would say is the classic alien.
Yeah.
Witnessed by Aleister Crowley.
Yeah, yeah. Amalantra, was that the Amalantra working?
Yeah. And they
Yeah.
actually said that Lom is, he said he was the disincarnate spirit of a Tibetan Lama. That's why his name is Lom or the Way, right? So you've got Jack Parsons, who I don't know if you've heard this, but he was who they based Tony Stark off of in the Avengers.
I didn't know he was some people said that it had to be Elon Musk, and it's like, well, no, you don't understand. This comic book has been around for years. So that would actually make sense. That would be more like Jack Parsons, because
Yeah.
Jack Parsons was quite some time ago.
Well, it was actually Tony Stark's dad is Jack
Huh.
Parsons. So that's how it goes. But that's also a sort of myth of, superheroes kind of plays into this too with the hybrids and the uh, elevated genetic class that they're going to try and push on people. Do you think that this imminent invasion is going to be sort of drug induced or Project Bluebeam or spiritual or all three?
Well, what we believe is that it's just going to fall flat on its face. It's going to
No
fail.
one's interested in aliens right
No, yeah, no one is interested. I think that it will be of the violent variety. In other words, it'll be hostile aliens at first, and I think that there will be real human casualties and
now.
all. And yeah, what we're just speculating now.
Oh,
I
right.
can't. I'm not saying defend. I'm not speaking here authoritatively. Oh,
Hey,
this is
everything we say on this show comes true eventually, so go
yeah,
ahead.
but yeah, I believe we believe that it'd kind of be a cosmic Gulf of Tonkin.
hmm
It's an incident out at sea, and so
Oh,
drone technology is used. It attacks an aircraft carrier. We'll make the hypothesis as we go along.
yeah,
It's an aircraft carrier, kills 6 to 10 U.S. servicemen on it, and then so then the news takes off. Was it the Russians? Was it the Chinese? And then all of a sudden, these otherworldly possibilities start to be
Yeah,
entertained
then you start invoking the beyond.
by all the news pundits.
Yeah.
And so for a very short period of time, it captures the people's attention, and they entertain for a very short period of time that this was probably an alien attack. But then, like I said, the propulsion systems and the weapons deployed are going to be terrestrial in nature.
Yeah,
It's
they're
somebody
discernibly terrestrial.
Scientists here will say, I recognize that stuff.
hmm
Look, Daddy was a contractor at Boeing. He used to take us to the lab. He's shown us this stuff. This is totally doable. And
Or
so
those people that can recognize it are missing now because of all of the scientists that are
yeah,
being going.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, you're right. The people that are missing could have probably told you, like McCaslin. We talked about him before it got on the show. There's a body of evidence that shows that McCaslin was actually a participant in this deception. That he was probably using Tom DeLonge from To the Stars Academy,
Hmm.
as a disinformation amplifier, and DeLonge being just a strung out, unwitting goofball he just eats it up and believes it all wholesale, doesn't vet a thing that he's shown and all, and so like you said, yeah, the people that would have been able to be the whistleblowers, they've taken the trip to
Have you
somewhere.
have you seen these pastors coming out, these evangelical pastors saying we've been to meetings, these disclosure meetings, that there's going to be some kind of religious dissemination of knowledge, like don't freak out, but the aliens are our space brothers and they want to
I'm
touch your
busy,
butt now.
yeah, I'm busy writing on that right now in what's going to be the seventh installment of our series.
Uh-huh.
And I reveal what we reveal, what we think it's going, what we think this is. Where, why are they didn't pull Perry Stone, but Perry Stone learned about it secondhand. But these pastors that know Perry Stone, I forget the one's named Dideo or something like that. Why would they pull them into a room and tell them all this stuff? Uh, um, it, we it looks to us to be a manifestation of what is called doctrinal warfare.
Okay.
And doctrinal warfare, it was, you can find documents. I'm citing the documents in the article, but you can find documents about it at the Central Intelligence Agency's own website. They're up there where it describes what doctrinal warfare is. But there's also a very good book over it by David Wimhoff, um, the American Proposal, something to that effect. David Wim Hof wrote about this, but doctrinal warfare is where you attack your enemy by attacking his ideology and by manipulating his religious doctrines.
Hmm.
You see his religious doctrines as one of the primary things energizing him, driving him to do what he's doing. So you try to change those doctrines up. You try to change up, his religious ideology. And lo and behold, there is an a nexus point that I go into that in the new article about a nexus point between UFO disinformation and doctrinal warfare. There was a guy. He was a CIA official named Nicholas de Rochefort, and Nicholas de Rochefort worked with an individual named Charles Lowry. Charles Lowry was a minister of some sort. I don't remember if it was Presbyterian. I don't have Wim Hof's book in front of me. But Wim Hof was this minister that worked with the CIA and worked, I believe, with the Nixon administration on doctrinal warfare and all. Well, de Rochefort and Lowry got together and they started this day called Freedom Day. It was a psychological operation known as Freedom Day, and Freedom Day took place in Berlin, New Hampshire, not Berlin, Germany, Berlin, New Hampshire, and it was basically a celebration of the East Germans um, when they tried to shake off the chains of communism, the East German rebellion against the communists, and they erected a statue and everything. But the one representative who was a real, I mean, like right of center kind of oriented, kind of deep state actor, Charles J. Kirsten, he praised he praised de Rochefort and Lowry for this Freedom Day work, for this effort, and he praised them, like I think it was on the floor of the House of Representatives, and he said that that this effort shown that it would be really desirable to form a private organization for the purpose of psychological operations like Freedom Day.
Hmm.
Well, what Jack Brewer, the researcher Jack Brewer, has pointed out is that is that after he made that suggestion on the floor of the House of Representatives, like 27 months later, all of a sudden NICAP arose.
Hmm.
And guess who was one of the founding members, organizers of NICAP? Nicholas de Rochefort.
Hmm.
So, so that's what I think so there is a intersection between UFO disinformation and doctrinal warfare. And so UFO disinformation, deception is actually might be a manifestation, another manifestation of doctrinal warfare, and we see it at play with these pastors being called into
Yeah.
this meeting and
I think also one
and
of the
being
reasons,
told and being told, hey, prepare your people.
yeah,
Why? What? What's insinuated is you better prepare your people because their beliefs are about ready to be shaken to their core. And what is it that both David Grush and Lou Elizondo, two of the major UFO disinformation agents at play right now, have said? They've said that that an alien reality has the potential of causing quote unquote ontological shock.
Hmm.
So, that's what I think is at work here.
I think also one of the reasons that they gathered together the particular pastors that they did, apart from the fact that they're televangelists and so they reach nationwide audiences, but these pastors also seem to be dispensationalist.
Hmm.
And dispensationalism, you find with dispensationalism this proclivity towards apocalypticizing apocalypticizing history and segmenting history up into uh, certain phases, and that that was never an Orthodox Christian theological practice. That actually began with people like the 12th century Calabrian abbot and hermit Joachim of Fiore, who advanced a neo-Gnostic eschatology. He apocalypticized history by configuring it according to his Trinitarian eschatology. Within that eschatology, each hypostasis of the Trinity, each one of the persons comprising the Trinity, represented a specific historical phase. So the pre-Christian era was divided into the age of the Father, who represented the Old Testament. And then, of course, the next age was the age of the Son, who represented the New Testament. You kind of have echoes there of Marcion and Marcion's dichotomizing of the Old and New Testament and basically portraying them as an antagonistic binary. And then the third apocalyptic age of Joachim's eschatology was the age of the Holy Spirit, which, surprise, surprise, Joachim declared himself the prophet of. He was the self-proclaimed prophet of the third age or the age of the Holy Spirit. And during that age, the church, sacred scripture, the state, all would basically wither away, almost in a Marxian sense. They would evaporate and give way to a free communist world.
Hmm.
And Joachim basically echoed ancient Gnosticism's docetistic attitude toward physical embodiment by asserting that in that final age, man would divest himself of the corporeal shell of his flesh and enter into disembodied bliss. But after Joachim, you have the 17th century German cobbler Jacob Boehm, or some people pronounce it Burma. Um, I've heard it pronounced both ways, but he inspired the English communist Gerard Winstanley. But Boehm, again following the lead of Marcion, advanced this bifurcated conception of God, to reflect what he perceived as two contrary natures. Uh, God of the Old Testament, again, embodied wrath, while the God of the New Testament embodied love. And these two contrary natures were just mirrors, nothing more than mirrors of human consciousness. And history was this evolutionary or dialectical process by which these binary essences were reconciled. Now, while Boehm's ideas closely parallel Gnostic emanationist speculation, there's the significant point of departure. Ancient Gnosticism expressed a docetistic cosmological attitude toward the descent of divinity into materiality. That would for the ancient Gnostic be the horror of horrors. God would not sully himself with the physical world. But on Boehm believed that divinity descended into materiality as an essential phase in God's self-revelation. God did not create out of love. He created out of felt need. And the whole purpose of creation was so that God could discover himself. And God, in essence, was man. Man was an amnestic deity
Mhm.
and a divine amnesiac. But we move along with uh, these Amanitist eschatologies, and we finally arrive at Hegel and Hegel's dialectic. And history again is this dialectical process where the thesis and the antithesis collide, and we have a synthesis, and where these dialectically related ideational entities are somehow reconciled, or at least the dialectical commonalities of those ideational entities are synthesized, and we have a brand new dialectic, and on, headed towards this glorious terminus. And then, of course, that the dialectic was atheized. It was reinterpreted in an atheist context by Karl Marx, and became, the dialectical materialism. But if you look at dispensationalism follows these same sort of schematics, where you have segmentalizing of history, often to essential phases, and the dispensationalist the dispensationalism of the modern American evangelical predisposes them to the acceptance of these Amanitist eschatologies. And once more, you have an Amanitist eschatology being insinuated into public consciousness through the UFO narrative. We have again the transposition of the eschaton into the vacuum, so separating celestial bodies. Space now becomes the uh, numinous surrogate for the supernature of Christian theology. Of course, there's a complete and total rejection of the supernature. There is only nature, but with the rejection of supernature, all of the traits of supernature, all of the qualities of a supernatural realm are transposed into the natural realm. And so again, we have aliens as being viewed as either God or angels or demons,
Mhm.
um, which leads to the two narrative paradigms that we see governing the UFO myth. Either the arrival of UFOs precipitating a crisis of diplomacy, where we have to learn to now commune with these angelic visitors, or a crisis of a militaristic crisis, a crisis where we have to now, through militaristic means, oppose these invading demons.
I was
But
just going to ask you, do you think that one way they could play it is that the aliens have arrived to save us from some kind of nuclear destruction of ourselves, kind of like Day the Earth Stood Still. You know, they intervene because we can't be trusted with our own planet, and now we have to listen to what they have to say.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I mean that was that if you look at the whole the contactee phenomenon, which pretty much started with George Adamski, which was a deep state manipulation and all those the stories that would come out of those contactee incidents, those contactee cases, always involved nuclear weapons in some way.
Mhm.
George Adamski, that with George Adamski, they talked to him about the nuclear weapons. With all these other individuals, that they talked about, well, what attracted us to you? What brought us here was, we saw these, these nuclear tests, or we saw this bomb going off, which
Yeah.
was Nagasaki or Hiroshima and all. In the book, in the book, Invoking the Beyond, we point out that basically, um, the whole the Beyond invoked as a super weapon, aka the nuclear bomb, acted as a midwife for the
Beyond
Beyond
invoked as
evoked as aliens.
yeah.
And we cite a document, a RAND document, a RAND study in our book, and in that RAND study, uh, a a scientist, I believe his name was James Lipp, his Lipp.
Mhm.
Um, in that RAND document, Lipp suggests that it might have been some test at El Gordo or the Hiroshima bomb and all that actually drew their attention to us and all. And so, Lip, whether he meant to or not there, what his suggestion, his little hypothesis, became the source of inspiration for the different covert political circles that would, begin foisting this alien deception upon us. That, well, how are we going to explain these aliens taking such an intense interest on the pale blue dot? Ah, well,
Mhm.
we can say, well, they of course they took they because we created this destructive weapon, and it was too big of an event for them not to notice, and so now they have to come here and tell us, hey, you're going to destroy yourselves and possibly destroy us in the process because the radiation will spread to the
Yeah.
rest of the cosmos,
Yeah. Interestingly enough, too, and that returns us to the theme of an exotheological Christ, and the day the earth stood still. What is, of course, the name of the visiting alien Messiah? It's Carpenter, and which is a conspicuous allusion to Jesus the Carpenter.
Mhm.
And that so you see this chronically throughout all throughout throughout science fiction literature and films is now a completely and totally reinterpreted, reinvented exotheological Christ.
So what you're saying is totally possible, and we even, suggest that in the book. Yeah. Whatever the aliens are giving us a guilt trip over, that's where the manipulation lies. And they're always giving us a guilt trip over
Yeah.
something.
Mhm.
They're, why are you so destructive with your planet? Why, do you pollute the streams and the little squirrels have nowhere to, you
Yeah.
know, rest their little heads now? Oh, why are you so warlike? They're always chastising us for being so destructive, with all at the same time that they're being destructive with our bodies, anal probing them
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and and
Taking
just
out chunks of
putting
flesh and
Yeah.
yeah, to putting us through all these sexual
Yeah.
humiliation rituals, but you're the destructive ones.
Yeah.
oh,
Shame on you.
You
yeah.
Why has no abductee? I think Charles Upton has even pointed that out. Why has no abductee turned around and shamed them for the way that they're
that
being
they've conducted
victimized?
yeah they've
Yeah.
conducted
you know,
We
there's an
didn't consent to this, right? They don't consent.
yeah, there's an interesting scene in the director's cut of The Abyss, James Cameron's film. In the director's cut, the aliens actually arrive to pass judgment on humanity. It's actually an extraterrestrial parousia, and uh, they are here to separate the sheep from the goats. And at one point, they're threatening to basically flood the world again. So allusions to Noah's flood, only now reinterpreted as a form of extraterrestrial judgment. Their their technology, which is somehow all aquatically based, allows them to uh, basically surround the cities of the world with just these walls of water, and they're preparing to basically drown all of humanity. And Ed Harris's character is, they're trying to plead the case for
which
humanity.
is doing an overhaul, I might say, to the Great Flood of the Bible.
Yes, yeah,
You
Well,
know,
don't you
but
think it's weird that's called the abyss and that's like a Crowleyan thing that you
yeah, yeah, but at this one point, Ed Harris's character says, "Well, who are you to judge us?" And interestingly, the aliens don't answer his question.
Hmm,
They don't answer his question at all.
yeah.
Um, it's not, it's not as though, this is God, and God is the ontological source of all moral values. He paradigmatically defines good. He is the good, the capital G good, the ontological good. Um, um, Ergo, questioning him would make no sense. Your questions would be stifled by the very fact that you are questioning good himself, and that the alien's silence to uh, Ed Harris's question seems to suggest that they are God, that
Mhm.
they are God, that they are the ontological good, that they and they alone are so good that they can, commit these acts of violence on us in order to stop all of our acts of violence.
They're the cosmic morality police. I don't know if you
Yeah.
guys like South Park at all, but there is a really funny episode um about when CERN came online. Remember when that happened? So in the episode in South Park, they fire up CERN and the aliens like, oh, they've got this technology now. We got to go visit them. So they come down and they give humanity a test. They like fix the economy by giving people space money, but they started hoarding all the space money, which is worthless, right? Just like fiat money is worthless.
yeah.
And so the humans made a whole big mess with the space money, and the aliens were like, that was just a test, and you are cut off from the rest of the universe because you believe in money. And they put them in a cube. They put the planet Earth in this like hypercube and went away to, they quarantined Earth because humans were so dumb, basically, in that show. But it's like what you're saying, like they are the judge of who gets to evolve in the Galactic Federation or the Galactic Civilization. So this is like something that people are going to be hearing more about. Like, do you want to be part of the Cosmos citizen or just an Earth citizen? And here's a curveball question for you guys. What do you think about the data centers?
Oh, data centers.
Yeah.
Uh,
Or they call them fusion centers. Now,
yeah.
this is a new development that you might want to look into, but what do you think?
This is just the latest manifestation of of this of this strategy of kill the natives, take the land.
Mhm.
And before this, we had, Bill Gates and the Chinese buying up all the farmland.
Yeah.
And, there's just been, I remember back when we first began in the early days of our research and our writing. One of the things we covered was the misuse of eminent domain. Eminent domain was was overhauled to where the public good, you can take land for the public good, all of a sudden became the corporate good, and there were people that were dispossessed of their land so a Walmart could go up.
Mm-hmm.
This seems to be another manifestation of kill the natives, take the land.
Well, did you know that Walmart tries to find like burial grounds, ancient burial grounds to build their Walmarts on?
I didn't know
No,
that.
I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
they do.
They're
Okay,
trying to incite poltergeist activity here.
yes.
They're
And if
trying.
when they find artifacts, they put them in a little case in the store. But this probably will have to be our last question because it's been over 2 hours and I really appreciate you guys' time. I know you have your own lives and families, but have you heard of the Collins elite story?
Yes. Yes, I'm going to talk about I keep on saying but we are going to talk about them somewhere in this series. By the way, the new series is going to eventually be compiled into a book, but I thought that we should do it in a serialized form. Uh, because when we did Invoking the Beyond as a book, it was like drinking from a fire hose. When
Mhm.
you break things down into installments and do a serialized version,
You organize your thoughts a
you
little bit more
a lot
carefully.
better, a
Yeah.
lot better, and all. The Collins elite is one of two things that, so far as we can tell. The first possibility is that they are an absolute chimera. They do not exist, and the UFO deception circles are using this myth to try to shut down um, any and all religious opposition to what they're saying.
Hmm.
There's that possibility. Something that supports that possibility is you go to the first book that ever talked about this, Nick Redfern's Final Events.
Mhm.
Um, he only presents one document. I mean, one sole like document that he shows a picture of that, that points to the existence of this Collins elite. And so it's like you'd expect more of a paper trail.
Mhm.
Even the most even the most secretive of groups, the Jason Society or the Bilderbergers, Bohemian Grove, there's more of a forensic trace, and you do enough digging, you're able to find them and all. Okay, so the second possibility is that they are quite real, but they're not what people think they are. And the reason, okay, now what supports the idea that they're real? Okay, I read Final Events about 2 or 3 years ago. When I first heard about it, when the book came out, I was like, it's completely ridiculous. He doesn't support it. But then what caused me to kind of change my mind and to entertain the possibility, at least that was real, was that I read Luis Elizondo's book Imminent, and all of a sudden he's talking about the Collins elite in his book as well. And so it's like, well, that means that they might be Elizondo is a pervasive liar, but a pathological liar. But maybe if he's saying it now, maybe there's some substance to it. Um, but everybody thinks that the Collins elite is this Christian group, this group of devout Christians. If you read though when Nick Redfern lays out what the Collins elite told him and what they believe, they they're they're not Christians in the sense that not apostolic,
Mhm.
not from one of the apostolically based communions. They are they're more so dominionist. They believe that, the only way to counter these demonic entities parading around as aliens is to reinstitute Old Testament law and to have a kind of Old Testament style theocracy. And
Hmm.
that's not what you won't find that in the Anglican communion. You won't find that in the Catholic communion, whether it be Byzantine, Roman discipline. You won't find it with Orthodox, whether it be Eastern, Coptic, any of the more apostolically based Christian sects would look upon that and would be like, what?
Mhm.
And all. And okay, did you ever read Final Event?
Mm-mm.
You didn't? Okay. Something I took note of in Final Events is that the Anglican minister that was with MUFON, who's dead now, Bosch, he puts Redfern in contact with his liaison, if you will, with the Collins elite.
Hmm.
The guy, the guy that is his liaison is from Offutt Air Force Base. Well, who was operating out of Offutt Air Force Base? Michael Aquino.
Oh no. Okay.
Okay, and again, dispensationalism plays a big part in the Collins elite's beliefs and all. And dispensationalists, this will give them heartburn to hear this, but they have a symbiotic relationship with Satanists. And
Hmm.
why do I say that? Well, John Nelson Darby, who founded dispensationalism, came from the Plymouth Brethren. Guess who else came from the Plymouth Brethren?
Crowley.
Aleister Crowley. And Aleister Crowley, while he left the Plymouth Brethren, he kept their dispensationalist beliefs and just incorporated it into his own unique kind of thelemic Satanism.
Hmm.
So, this group looks superficially Christian.
Yeah.
It's not,
Yeah.
but it's not,
That's something that, that's something
one more thing I'll add to that. Um, Another suggestion that they say they're Christian and they're not, and they're actually working with diabolical forces. In the book Final Events, he points out that they made contact, that he says that he was told by his liaison with the Collins elite is that the Collins elite made contact with and actually actively collaborated with Operation Often. And Operation Often began weaponizing Satanism. They were doing all sorts of experiments into Satanism
And
that,
Optin was the witches and stuff, right?
yeah, that Operation Often turned to Sybil Leek and used Sybil Leek to get into contact with witches, covens, and different satanically themed occult bookstores here in the United States, so that they could start getting different occult figures of the satanic variety. There she
There she
is.
is. That's your girlfriend.
Maybe not.
check out those sexy buck teeth.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's 5 or 6 beers before this.
Well,
No, but so the belief is that they are a Christian group, but they're
well,
not.
that,
They're more so a kind of Gnostic flavored kind of pseudo-Christian group
well,
that actually seems to be in contact with and collaborating with diabolical forces, with satanic forces, which shouldn't surprise anybody at all. Again, because uh, the Plymouth Brethren gave us both Crawley and gave us John Nelson Darby, and so there's a symbiosis there as a
yeah.
result
The
between.
thing that people don't seem to understand too is when you invoke the appellation of Christian, you can use Christian vocabulary, and Gnostics did quite a bit, quite prolifically, as did several other heretical groups. They use Christian vocabulary, but it's understood according to a very different dictionary. It's if you're not privy to the hermeneutic according to which the Christian vernacular is being understood, then you could easily mistake anything that you hear as Christian.
Mhm.
Um, and you know, and this is nothing new. The Dominionists are just one more installment in a series of Emanatist eschatologies. Before them there was there was Joachim Fior, there was Jacob Burma, Karl Marx, of course, following from Hegel, and Karl Marx also echoed English Civil War millennial sects and post-millennial Dutch and German Anabaptist, all of which invoke Christian vocabulary,
Mhm.
but not towards Christian ends. Certainly not invoked in according to the traditional Christian hermeneutic. It's invoked in a very different sense.
One more thing, and this is probably excavating a little bit deeper than what you you wanted to go. And I don't know if I can like organize all my thoughts right now regarding, this point, but I do want to put this out there because I'm going to write about it at a certain point. Um, America's oligarchy is not monolithic. It's not like it's one group that leads up to one central command. It's not Ernst Stavros Blofeld
Mhm.
leading all of Spectre, and all of Spectre follows his words with undying obedience.
Mhm.
It's a constellation of groups that actually are involved in constant internecine warfare.
Mhm.
And um, and two of the big power blocks here in the United States would be the liberal Eastern establishment, which are like power circles that you can find in the northeastern United States and on the East Coast, coming out of the Ivy League schools. They would be the Atlanticist, the globalist, as we, understand them and all. But then uh, another power block that's not too often talked about on any shows nowadays, that was actually brought to light by New Left scholars like Carl Oglesby and Kirkpatrick Sales, are the Southern Rim. And the Southern Rim are these elites that basically are located below the 37th parallel of the country in places like Texas, Arizona, Louisiana, Florida, portions of California, Nevada, places like that, areas like that. And they are a little bit different from the Eastern liberal establishment. The Eastern liberal establishment are cartel capitalist. They're entrepreneurial capitalist. The Eastern liberal establishment kind of would seek rapprochement with the communists. The Southern Rim, virulently anti-communist, and long story short, long way around Harvey's barn. When you read what Nick Redfern put out about what the Collins elite believe, when he what he wrote about what they believe about their precepts, you see that those precepts are more are found more in Southern Rim circles than they are in liberal Eastern establishment circles and all. The whole Hal Lindsey, uh, um, late great planet Earth,
Mhm.
left behind kind of stuff. That's more that those kind of beliefs are found more among the foot soldiers and the cadres of the Southern Rim. So the the Collins elite might be a UFO deception
Mhm.
circle that represents Southern Rim interest, as opposed to liberal Eastern establishment interest. The deception takes on different manifestations depending on which power block is behind that particular part of the deception.
Well, don't you think it's interesting how the rapture is a lot like abduction?
Oh yeah, very much so. Very much. That's in essence what you have at the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind is a rapture, you
Hmm.
know.
Of the kids, of course, they always want the children, right?
Yeah, of course. The elect are gathered into the sky, and
Hmm.
the rest, the rabble, the damned are left on earth. And it doesn't surprise because the rapture is completely a modern innovation, originating with the Schofield Bible. And again, it's redolent of Gnosticism. It involves escaping the earth, not the redemption of the earth.
And again, like it gives them heartburn to hear this, but they share more in common with the Satanists that they claim to be opposed to.
Hmm.
They we used to work with Michael Corbin, the syndicated talk show host down south of where we are in Colorado. We were really, really good friends with him and wrote for his journal and appeared on his show while he was still alive. But there was there was one writer that he had on his show named R. Roy Blake. And R. Roy Blake wrote this book called Objective Evil, which is damn near impossible to find now. You just can't find it anywhere. This book has been effectively suppressed. If there's anybody out there that can find it, I'd almost pay anything. I don't
Almost.
almost any price to
What's the
get
author?
uh, R. Roy Blake and it's Objective Evil.
Blake.
Yeah, yeah, Blake.
Uh-huh.
I've read. Oh, I got several other books that he wrote. All these, but that one book, Objective Evil, you can't find anywhere. Michael was going to give me a copy of it, but then he passed on before it happened, and all of his estate went to somebody else.
Oh no.
But anyways, R. Roy Blake appeared on one of Michael's show before he was doing a closer look,
Paranet
the
Continuum.
Paranet Continuum,
Yeah.
and R. Roy Blake pointed out he was like, there's this strange kind of relationship between evangelicals and Satanists. There are Satanists, former Satanists that become evangelicals, and then there's evangelical ministers that are reputed to be secret Satanists. He's like, there's and it's like I was like, well, I wonder where did this symbiosis come from? And then I looked into the Plymouth Brethren, this really Gnostic sect of Christianity, and saw that, well, there's probably one of the reasons
The
why, because of
common point of origin.
the common point of origin for John Nelson Darby and Aleister Crowley. It's so they both end up sharing a lot in common as a result of their point of origin. They came from the same place.
Hmm.
So yeah,
That's crazy. Are you guys gonna see Disclosure, the Steven Spielberg movie?
I have to see it now because I sat through we we
Do we have to?
okay. So
Yes, you have to.
part seven, the seventh installment in our series, we started to go, we went into uh the Age of Disclosure, the Dan Farah movie.
Hmm.
uh, the Dan Farah
Documentary.
documentary that
Documentary.
came out, because it has all of the OSAP ATIP fraternity on it. They're on full display. Lou Elizondo is throughout the whole thing. They show Davis Grush briefly. Hal Puthoff is there. Eric W. Davis is there. Jay Stratton. All of those guys, all of them were in it. So I was like, well, I have to go into it. We can't go into it unless we sit and watch it. I sat and watched all 120 some odd minutes of the. I had to bear through that. So now I have to bear through Disclosure Day and all. One of the reasons being is because Dan Farah, who directed and produced Day of Disclosure, worked with Spielberg on Ready Player One. So,
Oh, okay.
you know,
Which is Gnostic, by the way,
Yep.
right?
yeah,
Gnos-
which is Gnostic as
Vincent
hell.
Gnosticism.
So it looks to me like okay, like what they're doing right now is they're like, okay, well, phase one will release will release the documentary
Uh-huh.
in quotes, and then and then phase two will release the entertainment, the fictionalized version, and give the same
Yeah. And
message.
the reason for that, I'll try to make this as brief as possible. The reason for that is that through the medium of fiction,
Mhm.
and you can find this out by reading a literary essay by a literary scholar by the name of Martha A. Barter. It's an essay entitled "Normative Fiction." She explains how through the willing suspension of disbelief,
Mhm.
audiences question the status quo, the present status quo. They question their present convictions, and they engage in I believe it was John Campbell, who of course wrote Who Goes There, and famous science fiction author, what he called sociocultural Gedanken experiments, or Gedanken experiment being German for thought experiments.
Mhm.
And through uh, through the audiences actually engage in these thought experiments, and through these thought experiments you see the gradual change of the status quo, the gradual and very subtle revisions to the status quo. And that's why she refers to science fiction as normative fiction. Normative meaning, normative meaning an ought. Normative theory always posits an ought, how things ought to be. Like normative economics deals with how an economic system ought to work. Likewise, normative fiction uh, posits an ought concerning society, concerning the world, concerning governmental processes, concerning culture. And so you'll see, I guarantee you'll see certain subtle normative claims insinuated into the narrative of the upcoming Spielberg movie. Although I kind of even doubt it'll be subtle, because Spielberg gets so just bombastically preachy. That's one of the reasons John Carpenter as a filmmaker hates Spielberg, because he finds his work to be just so preachy and so freaking overwrought. And
Well, yeah, it is over the top in the symbolism too. And you reminded me when you were talking about E.T. So remember the poster of E.T.? His finger is pointing to the human finger.
yes,
Like
the
he,
Sistine Chapel
Yeah,
portrait. Yeah,
Michelangelo.
the
yeah.
Michelangelo Sistine Chapel portrait. Yeah, that's a clear allusion to that. You know what, the original script for Close Encounters, what it was titled. It was written by Paul Schaefer, who of course wrote Taxi Driver, and I believe he also wrote I can't remember everything else.
Prater, I think he did. I
Paul
think the
Schrader.
movie was called Autofocus, which was
Yeah,
about the guy from Hogan's Heroes and his
yeah,
strange death.
yeah. Well, Paul Schrader, you know what, his original script, which by the way, Spielberg originally hated. He initially hated it, but you know what the title of that script was?
Mm-mm.
Kingdom Come.
Oh, weird.
Yep, Kingdom Come. So you have the intimations of an immanent Perusia,
Yeah.
of an extraterrestrial second coming. And interestingly enough, the main character in Kingdom Come, which was just completely overhauled and rewritten into uh, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The main character was supposed to be patterned after Saint Paul, and this
Oh.
is his Damascus Road experience.
Uh,
And lo and behold, what happens to Richard Dreyfuss's character in Close Encounters? He's in his truck and he witnesses what? A blinding light.
mhm.
Here we have a clear allusion to the Damascus Road experience, although it's now being reinterpreted in an exotheological context.
Yeah, great point. And do you remember that show, The X-Files? So when that was on in the 90s, I remember it was a big deal when they were like, stay tuned after X-Files because we're gonna show you the footage of the UFO crash or this like uncovered footage that they had found where they were doing an alien autopsy. That was
Yeah,
Alien
great
autopsy.
sense. So
yeah. And we were at the Roswell Museum and they had a thing set up just like it, like a alien autopsy. And I'm like, this is the goofy stuff they were trying to push us off on us in the 90s as like real, underground, like leaked footage. And it was all like goofy,
No, it's like real cheesy
made of
50s
rubber.
sci-fi stuff. The stuff that MST3K like makes fun
Yes,
of.
exactly. Mystery Science Theater stuff. Well, I could hang out with you guys all night. Looks like we have a lot to talk about. So would you come back after the Steven Spielberg movie and do another show with me?
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely,
This was
absolutely.
all a preamble to your guys' amazing two-part article, which we barely even got to because we were just kind of going through Gnosticism and the aliens first, but how it all is going to play out in the future with AI and the interface that AI is going to become sort of like a Ouija board.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. We touch on that citing the El Cerrito case.
Yeah, the Elser, most people have never even talked about that. It was a wild and crazy case. Most people don't even, it's a part of American history that most people don't know about.
Yes.
But the Ouija board was actually outlawed in one city in the United States back in the 1920s,
Hmm.
and all because it caused the cause of for a cross section of that population there to go ape shit.
Yeah.
Well, I won't say it, but go nut.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, most people don't know that there's an actual pathology that comes from the use of Ouija boards, that known as mediumistic psychosis. That
Mhm.
Lo and behold, now we have an emergent psychological phenomena that is only now being broached by psychiatric journals, which is called AI psychosis.
Mhm.
So you see these parallels between the non-compos mentis that's induced through the use of the Ouija board and the non-compos mentis induced through the constant consulting with AI.
Mhm.
Um, and the question that we ask, the second half of the article, the first half of the article is more or less just a standard treatment of transhumanism, but we basically just completely debunk transhumanism on the grounds that for all practical purposes, AI is a chimera.
Mhm.
Um, the the a the assumption is that consciousness will arise from computation, but that's not even possible. Computation finds its ontological source in consciousness,
Mhm.
which is not what it's not what AI is. AI is
you
not by
you're putting the cognitive cart before the
yeah,
horse.
and
Yeah.
what AI hard AI theoreticians and transhumanists tend to do is they tend to assign a positive ontological status to information.
Mhm.
They ontologize information, and the fact is that information is ontologically inert, just like the physical laws of the universe are ontologically inert. The law of gravity doesn't create gravity; it simply describes gravity. The arithmetic information, 2 plus 2 makes 4, doesn't give you 4 of anything. It just describes for you an arithmetic process, the
Mhm.
combination of 2 plus 2 making 4. You can say 2 plus 2 make 4 all day long, but it won't put $4 in your pocket. So it's ontologically inert. Information is ontologically inert, but they have ontologized it and elevated it to the status of supreme reality.
Mhm.
But it's not. It's all a chimera. It's all a fiction. And so the question we ask is, since AI is just a fiction, since this is, nothing more than just a case of anthropomorphic projectionism, because that's what the transhumanists and the AI theoreticians do. They project anthropic qualities onto the computers that they exalt, which is ironic given the fact that Feuerbach accused Christians of anthropomorphic projectionism, with their belief in God. It's actually more so the scientific materialists now who are engaging in anthropomorphic projectionism. But given the fact that this is all a chimera,
Mhm.
what is it that the transhumanists and the AI theoreticians are actually interfacing with?
I
Yeah.
mean, the AI doesn't have any sentience of its own, and it never will.
Mhm.
But is something sentient talking through it?
Just
Just
Mhm.
like talk through a Ouija board?
Could it not do that through a keyboard?
You
Right.
know,
And is
And
this the same thing that they've been invoking from the beyond all of the
yes,
time?
yeah,
Okay.
that's
Well,
the beyond
yeah,
invoked as
yeah.
technological singularity.
Like whether it's ritual beds or a Ouija board or a pack of tarot cards or a keyboard,
mhm.
you might be interfacing with something that's beyond you, and you don't dictate the terms of that relationship. And that's true even for these deep state actors that believe that they have it all down and they have every contingency covered. They don't dictate the terms to so they're going to find themselves in a world of hurt too. At some
Well,
point.
it's the Faustian age too, where you don't know what you are contacting and they could be deceiving you, right? And you think you're controlling them, but they are really controlling
They're
you. So
controlling you. Yeah.
thank you guys so much. This was awesome. I can't wait to do part two. That was the perfect setup for our sequel, and I really enjoyed tonight's talk. So everybody go get a couple issues of cultural engineering studies, and I'm gonna get another copy of Invoking the Beyond for this place. So thank you guys, and everybody have a good night.
Hey, thank you, Jamie.
Good night now.
Bye.